Hi, this is Paul here in Spanaway, Washington. It's pretty late. I'm in the parking lot in my car. This is after work, and the car's warming up. I decided that I'd make a short video on get different kind of video, just kind of a rant about the idea what I'm trying to do on my property. When I was about 19 years old, I went to a small electronics store in Inglewood, near LA International Airport. There was an electronics store called Inglewood Electronics, and they had photovoltaic cells that were rejects from the satellites. They were going to be put on a satellite. They were either for Hughes or TRW, one of those companies. And so this small electronics store bought, the rejects in bulk. And what I did is I mounted them on plates so I could get the negative side on the back. They were very fragile. And then I could wire them together in parallel and make a 12-volt solar panel. So what I did is I took a 3-ring binder, and I mounted I soldered the silicon rectangular wafers onto the plates, and then I glued the plates onto the inside of the binder and wired them all in parallel to get 12 volts. And I remember I used my dad's, he had an analog voltmeter. It was kind of neat with a dial. You could dial in different voltages, and I used that to check what I was doing, because sometimes the chips, or the cells, the photovoltaic cells, would be reversed. The positive would be on the front and the negative would be on the back, so I had to redo a couple of them. But I had a nice little folder I could take to the beach with me, and I'd take it, and I had a little 4-way adapter for different size DC jacks that I got from Radio Shack, and I soldered that onto the ends of the solar cells, and I was able to get enough power to power my little boom box. So I took it to the beach, and I'd play my tapes on the beach, and play them all day long there. And that was my first experience with solar. And after that, I thought a lot about it. I ended up giving that away to somebody as a present. And when I moved here in Washington, I saw the Harbor Freight had a set for 45 watts, and that was my first one I bought, and it was really, I thought I could run an inverter off of it first. So I bought an inverter and it didn't work, and then I bought a battery, and then I did a little more research, and I figured I'll get the charge controller, because I was reading that the charge controller in the box wasn't that good, and it was you could get a better one, so I got a better charge controller. And I kept adding on to the system, and I did a little bit of research, and the battery that I picked was because it's a common size battery. It's used in a lot of they make a lot of that size, so it's a cheaper one. And the AGM is, you can turn them anyway. They don't need to be watered, because a friend of mine, he had an off-grid system, and he's constantly, it was drying up all the time, and he ended up ruining his batteries because they dried up, and it wasn't really very well maintained. So I figured, well, AGM batteries are good because I can just have them in my shop and not have to worry about them if they get, the water, going down, doing the hygrometer test and all that on them, which, it's cheaper, but I wanted to, get the fancy kind. So I bought a gel battery, which was the first. I bought 3 of those, and then I bought the AGM batteries. They were a little less pricey. And that's what I have in that string. So what I was going to talk about is why do this? Why do people? I mean, like me, I'm probably thought of as an eccentric person in my neighborhood, because here I am in Washington. It's cloudy and raining a lot. And I live on this piece of property with trees. Half of it, I only get probably about, at the most in the middle of summer, I might get 7 hours of sunlight. Here in the winter, I'll probably get 4 hours, or 3 or 4 hours, in January or December, of direct sun, in the best location of my yard. But what I want to do is, I really believe that solar is the way of the future, and if more people were curious and experimented, even if you just buy a small panel, if you're going to make one yourself, you better have a nice area in your house and all the right equipment and a clean area, and nothing can interfere with it, and you got it all set up with a big table and all that. That's fine. Try to make your own. But I'm saying, just if you want to start out and you're curious about, well, how much power does solar create? If you get like a 10-watt panel or a 20-watt panel, well, how much charging can that give you on your battery? And if you can make it so you can have your outdoor lights, or you can have a pond to pump, or you can have a small television set, or just use it for making your coffee or whatever, have it hooked up to one appliance, or do like your weed whacker, what I did at first. I had a little car battery and I charged it with my panels, and I ran a weed whacker with that little Harbor Freight 600 watt inverter, modified sine inverter. So it's renewable energy. It'll last, and it'll last a long time, and it renews. It's not like you're using something up that's a dead plant, or something, a fossil fuel. It's renewable, and that is, it'll keep coming and coming and coming, because the sun will keep shining always, and it's almost unlimited power. Those panels will last a long time. The good ones will. Your good monocrystalline panels will get up to at least 80% charge after 25 years on a lot of them. So it's like somebody giving you a battery that's going to last for 25, 30 years. And it's independence too. If you can make your own power, you're independent. You don't have to rely on the power company. If the power goes out, you have emergency power. It's a return on your investment. If you experiment and figure it out, get a kilowatt meter and figure out how much power you're using in your home, and you get a system. We'll start out small, do an experiment, and find out how big of a panel, how much power it makes, for a typical small system. And then once you've played around with it, get a bigger system, have it professionally installed. So there's security in that. Always have a feeling that you're secure, in that if you have an off-grid system, you have a power source. In the midst of anything can happen. If there's like a solar flares, or if there's civil unrest, or if there's a big earthquake or a hurricane or something, you'll have power if your power goes out for a long time. And then it does reduce your carbon footprint if you plan it out well, and you do it and you use the power effectively. That what you make, you'll feel good that you're doing your part, and you're showing a good example to your kids, or to your neighbors, or your community. If the people that you live are supportive of that live near you. And it's locally produced. You produce it on your own property. You are in control of that power, and you know where it's coming from. It's not coming from a dirty coal plant, or a nuclear power facility, or that's people think, well, nuclear is the way to go. Nuclear is it's clean, and it's all but there's all these other factors involved. They got to mine the uranium, they got to process that uranium, and then when the uranium's burnt up and it's used up, then they got to get rid of it. So, and then you got a huge building with this huge piece of material, all the cement and metal and everything that degrades after so many 20 years or 30 years. The plant has to be mothballed, so decommissioned. So, and then you got coal plants that make electricity burning coal. So that's like, these are things that have to go away eventually. And if you want to be a good example, especially if you see these little kids around, you go into markets, or you see babies in strollers, and you wonder, what's the world going to be like for these little kids that you see right here, right now? Or we're just going to leave this mess for them to clean up when they're 40 and 50 years old. Or is that right, to have to use everything up? Or should we plan more for the people that are coming into the future, the youngsters that are coming on? So, and it's educational. The kids can learn about power and electricity. if they start out with a small setup. Look on my playlist for off-grid solar systems, and a lot of other people have done really good videos, better than I have, on setting up getting started with a small solar kit. You know, the Harbor Freight, or just getting one panel on eBay, and then, you know, adding to it. You know, you can add more panels later on, and start off with get a little automotive battery or a motorcycle battery, or, you know, and then use that and charge that and run a radio off of it. You know, and start out real small, start out with baby steps, and then work your way into it. Learn more as you go, you know, and do research on it. And there's a lot of things you can use your little, you know, off-grid setup for. You know, I like the idea. The grid tides look good. There's promise in them. The only problem I have is I'm wondering, well, how about the legality of it? I mean, when you're signed up for your utility you're getting from your supplier, is there a contract you signed with them that says something about interfering or using or adding on to their equipment? Because when that power line leaves your property and you're pushing electrons out onto the grid, you're responsible for that. So you could get sued if something goes wrong. And these little, you know, grid tied inverters, the Chinese made ones, I don't know how you might want to check with your power company to see if they're approved or not, if you can use those. Otherwise you might get sued. You know, your neighbor might get shocked, or some guy on the line will get shocked if there's a brownout or whatever, and the thing doesn't work and it's supposed to shut off and it doesn't. So that's my opinion on that. I see a lot of people advocating and liking those, but I kind of wonder about them. You know, and then you got safety too. You got to remember to be safe. You always want to put safety first. Don't do anything that would, you know, think about what you're doing, and don't drink and then mess with solar, or use drugs and mess with the solar, because you could hurt yourself. You do cross the wires wrong or something. You know, you got to be safe always. And you know, there's other things that can happen too. There could be, you know, a terrorist attack, you know, could bring the grid down, or there could be coronal mass ejection, or there could be a war, or a big, you know, earthquake. And you know, and even if you're you can afford it and get a certified grid tied that's approved by your utility, and have that, you can still have a battery with a battery charger there always sitting and being charged, and that way if the power goes out, you can just use that battery that you have on a charger for emergencies. So and then there are all these other problems, you know, that if you get started on solar, and you know this is the way of the future, this is how the future is going. I mean, eventually you got, you know, coal's going to run out, and it's causing problems with the climate. Everybody knows that. And it's, you know, we have CO2 problems, and the acidification of the oceans, and the coral reefs, and the melting glaciers, and, you know, and all these problems that are going to happen from the climate. You know, the anthropogenic warming. But some of you probably will deny that. But it's more and more becoming a, you know, it's most of the scientists out there will support me on that. So it can be fun as a hobby. You know, you learn about DC and what DC current is, and AC, and you know, it's not polluting. You know, and it's also, I like wind. Wind is good. If you have a property for wind, and you got lots of room around you, you got nothing no tree branches can blow into your windmill, your wind turbine, or no birds are going to fly into it, or your neighbors aren't going to hear it whooshing, and it's safe, and you can have it in a good spot, then go for it. Have wind. Wind is great. You know, that's, you know, but most people, I don't think it, like where I live, we don't hardly ever get any wind at all. I mean, where I live at, the wind just like maybe a couple days out of the year we'll get a couple windy days. So wind I've never really, you know, but solar panels, you know, you set them on your roof. They're safe. They don't hurt anything. You can't hear them. They don't make any noise. If something happens, they're not gonna be radioactive. They're there, and they're making electricity for, you know, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're not polluting the air. So, you know, I mean, what could be better than solar power? So really, seriously, everybody ought to really think about solar more. So you start off with a small system. Get yourself, you know, maybe even if it's getting a little attic fan, or maybe a shop light, or an outdoor light, or a little pond pump, you know, with a solar panel. Do that, because you'll learn a lot. And then as you grow, as you get, you know, as you figure out, well, hey, solar's pretty cool. I can really power a lot with this. Then you'll get more panels, and you'll get a bigger system, and you want to power your you know, your TV and your power tools and small appliances like I do, and eventually you get a bigger system and power your have a circuit in your house dedicated to like just a few plugs in your house. You can, you know, if you know a lot about electricity, or you're an electrician, you can actually make a dedicated circuit panel, and then break your one circuit in your house, like that maybe goes to the front room where your TV's on, where your lights are, or in a certain rooms, maybe a dedicated one room in the house, a bedroom, and have that on the solar, so all of those electrical plugs are running to the circuit breaker that's tied to your inverter, your sine inverter. So, you know, you can do that, and you learn, and you can grow and add to it. So you get a higher voltage system eventually, if you want, you know, or if you're knowledgeable, you can get. It's better to have a higher voltage system, especially if your panels are far away on your roof, or on a stand that I like to have on a stand, because once you start putting stuff on your roof, you got to think about loads, you know, and how much weight is that on your roof. Your roof's rated, depending upon your home, that weight on your roof may exceed your load. So if you get a heavy snow, or you get, you know, so you got insurance problems there. So a ground mounting system may be better for most people, or in certain I feel ideal for my situation. So think about ground racks, you know, on the ground, or a pole rack, you know, pole mounting, and a dedicated circuit off your main circuit breaker in your house. Another thing about solar, okay, you got to be aware of the legal things, you know, and your homeowner's insurance and your building codes, you know. Also, if you're going to put panels on your roof, if you get high winds, or if you're in a tornado area or a hurricane area, you got a big piece of glass on your roof. So if that thing is loose and it's not mounted on the roof correctly, you could blow off, and you know, then it'll hit your neighbor's house. You might get sued. So you got to be careful of that. Now the water storage setup that I have. Okay, why am I doing all this with water? What's the point having these tanks? You know, I mean, yeah, a barrel's okay, but what about, you know? So my neighbor was like looking at my tanks, kind of looking at them funny, like, what's he going to do with those? And I told him, well, you know, if the hydrant goes out, if there's a big fire in the area, or which, you know, happens, there are wildfires that sweep through. When I lived in California, this happened quite frequently, and then all of a sudden there's no water pressure, because all the fire department is using the water pressure to put the fires out. So if there is a fire, then that big tank of water, which is kept full all of the time, it's topped off all the time, kept topped off, that could be used to put out a fire, a house fire, especially if there's a, you know, whatever, there's civil unrest, and there's fires in the area, and there's no water pressure in the hydrant, you know, then you got an emergency water source. Or if, you know, if something happens, you got water enough for everybody in your neighborhood to flush their toilets with. They can come over and get 5-gallon buckets and use those to flush their toilets, or whatever, you know, and then you got a good relation. So if the neighbors get at you for your big tank in your yard, just tell them, hey, it's an emergency, it's insurance. And you know, you don't even need a rain barrel. What you can do is you can go to your hardware store and get a garbage can, metal can, or a plastic, you know, like a cheap one, and use that bulkhead, the Boona bulkhead fitting that I was showing you. Buy one of those, and you can actually hook that up to drill a hole in the trash barrel, and use a lid for keeping mosquitoes out, and have that, and use that set up with a pipe off. Instead of the downspout, use a pipe like what I'm showing in my other video, and that would be very discreet. Nobody would even know you had water storage. I mean, you couldn't hardly tell unless you looked at the corner of your house really carefully. So it's discreet. You're not having a barrel in the corner of your house. You could have a trash barrel with a hose running to it and have that off of that bottom of that pipe. So there's lots of creative things to do. And you got to think about water, you know. I mean, everybody needs water, always, you know. If something happens, especially if you live in an urban area where you're dependent on your water service for your water, if that goes out, then, and there's like the roads are blocked because there's debris from an earthquake, then, you know, you got at least enough water in your house or by your property to be able to flush your toilet, do your washing, you know, or cooking, or whatever you need your water for, to last until they get the water fixed, which might be a week, 2 weeks, you know. So having water in storage on your property is a very wise thing to do, and I would recommend everybody who owns a house, especially if you live in a big city and you're in this city, have a rain barrel or a trash barrel full of water all the time. It's just, it'll save you, and you'll remember me. Hey, that guy told me about I should have bunches of water stored in my property, and there'll be an earthquake, and you'll think about me, and I'll be, hey, yeah, you remember me now. So, earthquake, civil unrest, water pressure drops out of water, you need water, or there's a wildfire, you'll have water to put your fire out if you have a pump with it, like I do, or flush your toilets, you'll have the water to flush your toilet. So think about rainwater. It doesn't have any chlorine in it, doesn't have any fluoride in it. It's better for house plants. It's if you have an aquarium with fish, you can use that for your aquarium, or water for pets. If you have exotic pets, birds or whatever, they need water without any chlorine in it or fluoride. It's healthier for them, healthier for you too. Think about getting a Berkey filter, a small one. You can buy them for emergencies. Great. And rain barrels, they last a long time. If you keep them out of the sunlight, you know, they'll last for many, many, many years. You'll have that as a container for emergencies, and always keep it full of water. And you can use your rainwater for like washing. Like if you have a lot of pets, you can wash your pet blankets or your rags, you know, in the rainwater. Have a separate area in your and it's security. It's a personal way of having security, of being safe, and feeling safe, that you'll know you'll always have water available in emergencies. You can use the setup that I have with the pipes on the corner of your house. You can also use that to fill a swimming pool. You know, instead of filling your swimming pool with utility water, you could just have a couple rainstorms and refill your swimming pool that way. There's another thing you can do is buy some cheap land. You know, you'll find land that nobody wants because the groundwater is contaminated, or there's no utilities there, and you can do like what I did, have an off-grid electrical and water system, and then buy the land for real cheap and use that money that you would have spent on land that was connected to the grid to set it up for an off-grid water and power. You use that, use the rain capture setup that I've demonstrated for watering your landscape. Like you can just have a hose go to the bottom of the pipe on the corner of your house, and have that hose drain to where plants are that you want to keep watered all the time. There might be plants that need a lot of water. You can have that end of the hose just drain in there. So that would be something you could do with like the setup that I'm showing. You know, and okay, stored rainwater for outdoor watering. Yeah. Okay, freedom of choice. This is what I always think about. Freedom of choice. You're forced to buy your electricity from one supplier. So if they ever decide to raise a price, or the quality of service goes down, you're stuck. You have to buy that from them. So in a way, if you make your own setup and your own system off grid, you're independent from them. That's the way you're free from that, from having to buy your power always from that same one. Same thing with water. Why should you just have one choice? Why is it you only can buy your water from one company? why not have a choice and have your own water? Get rainwater, store it, you know, get in big cisterns and use that for your plumbing, or use it for your toilet, your shower, your laundry, and drinking, or whatever, you know. And you know, so that, you know, that's my advice, you know. And so think about what I'm saying here. And later on I'll do another video on the gardening. I'm not a real gardening expert, but I really am an advocate for gardening, and especially for food and fruit, growing your own food. And just want to let you know, be safe. Make sure always safety first out there, okay? Bye.